Welcome back to the Belonging Place, where we talk about community, connection, belonging, and I couldn't be more excited to have my friend Becca. Because Becca, I think that you really get and understand what I'm trying to do with the belonging place and connection and community, which we'll get into in just a little bit. But before we jump into all good things that we love, tell us a little bit about you. It sounds like you've jumped around quite a bit. Maybe give me your elevator pitch of your life, which is I know hard.
Of my life. Perfect. Perfect.
Pick whatever you want to share. But yeah.
I think I have had a lot of different experiences, and I think that my understanding of the world as well as who I am is continually remade by the people and places I encounter. And so I grew up in a really small town in Maine and went to college where the student population was twice the size of my hometown population.
Wild. Yeah.
And then I had the opportunity to do Teach for America, where I discovered things like structural, systematic, you know, racism. And I worked with different populations that I hadn't interacted with
Where were you
before.
doing Teach for America?
In New York City.
Okay.
And I got to do a semester abroad in Jerusalem during Israeli Independence Day. And that
we both got to do, which is crazy. Yes.
Just a really wild experience. And I was a special ed teacher in a public school in Rome, in downtown across the street from the Colosseum. So I had all of these people in my life in situations that I had never considered growing up. And so essentially what that asked of me was to continually challenge who I consider part of my community. And when I think about belonging and community, and really that's the work that I do, and it's very much who I am. I'm a gatherer and a connector. I love to connect people, ideas, projects, any of the things I can make them fit. And so I think all of these experiences and places and situations that I've been in have just reinforced that's who I am at my core.
Love that.
I connect things.
I didn't realize you did Teach for America. I did the other side of that, and I did I was in AmeriCorps Vista.
Okay.
Yeah, in Boston actually, which is where I fell in love with I actually went to Maine. I had this life goal to go to Friendship, Maine. So and I really wanted to go to Portland, Maine, because I'm from right outside of Portland. I'm from a town in Gresham in Oregon. And so I had some feelings.
Ours was the first one.
Oh, yeah, it was. Yes. Yours was the first one. I love this. Before we jump into all things gathering and where that got you, besides traveling around a lot, you ended up getting married and you have some kids. And how has that journey been?
Oof. Yeah. I think it's interesting to, we think about our childhood all the time.
Right.
And when we talk about what's the most formative and where do you get your ideas and what kind of family culture have you inherited, to be in the position of creating that culture for other humans it's exciting, it's overwhelming. And I feel like as my kids are older now and getting to the point where they're starting to leave, that now the question is, what are they taking away? What do they remember? What have we done? How did we prepare them to leave? And at the end of the day, what I want from parenting and from my children is for them to be good humans, to realize that their experience is not the only experience, and to be curious about other people's lives and circumstances. So
I love that.
I have no idea how successful I've been, but that's sort of that's the hope.
Yeah. And I think we have what I call our lived experience, right? You get to be right in the middle of watching it. And I would say, as somebody who's from a family of 8, and my mom would say to some capacity, that the way that she thought that her kids would turn out might equal that she didn't do a good job parenting. I've often said to my mom, you did a great job. People have agency and look at all the things that we're doing well. So it is hard to say what's successful and what, and I think the measure of they're good people and good in society is is a good measurement, right? Not what religion are they, or did they go to this, or what job do they have, but are they kind to people? Are they a safe place to land? Things like that. I said, Mom, You did a good job because and I always say the definition for me of to my mom is like we always want to come home.
Yeah.
So as
They
long as
still
we
like
always
me
want
at
to
the
come
end of it.
home, yeah.
Exactly.
So I have a question for you about this situation, running parallel with you and your, I feel like kinship to you and your desire to like see the world and eat the food and learn the language and be in the culture and like do your own thing. I would like to know how you feel like you were able to be independent Becca, or like be yourself
Mhm.
and have interests and desires and dreams and hobbies and things while you are also, mom, or even
I
wife, or and
yeah.
even like I, not everybody does that or even does that well. And I'm not even saying you did it well, but I'm saying I think that's interesting, and I think that's such a good modeling and a gift to kids to see their parents like still be themselves. So I'm
Mhm.
I'm curious, yeah, how you navigated that.
Yeah. I think my mom was an amazing role model in
Mm,
this. So she was always involved. She had a podcast, she had
mm,
a state cable show, she had 6 kids. She didn't have a career per se, or she would work things in,
mm,
but she was also a gatherer and
mm.
she would join clubs, she'd be involved in the community. And so that's how I
She modeled it,
perceived
yeah, to you.
being a mother and a wife, and those roles that we inherit as women and sometimes don't inherit as women, but that's the expectation, right? So I
Right.
think there's a lot to unpack there too. But she prioritized fun.
Mm,
She would go on trips with her girlfriends. So it really wasn't weird to me, or didn't feel countercultural
mm,
to still be who I am, and
got it.
to care about what I care about. But I will say I took about 10 years off from working, where I was just at home
Momming.
and focusing
Yeah.
on being a mom. And then that sort of shifted for me when we moved back to Utah, where I felt like I need community and I need to do something.
Mm,
So,
okay. Okay. I okay. I don't like part of me is just like, I want to talk about it all and I don't even know where to start. Okay. Let's talk about we're gonna jump into like what you do and how it's like a culmination of like I feel like
all the
all the
things.
things that you
Mhm.
love and you landed. I earlier said I have like there's this term in religion, but called holy envy. And I said, "Oh, I have holy envy because," and that's why I'm excited to have you on here and talk about it because there's a few types of jobs that would like take a bunch of the things that I do, and I feel like this is one of them that I like couldn't even conceive of how great you guys are doing, all the way down to like your teen counsel, and which we'll talk about a little bit more. As a teen therapist, I am always looking for where are they like bringing in the voices
Mhm.
of the younger generation, and so I was like giddy when I looked on the website and I was like, they're doing it, she's doing it. So um let's lead into it because
Okay.
I would like to know, I mean you talked about a smattering of things. We both actually did Jerusalem at the same time, and we were both 20, which we're, decades older now. We look back. Um, is there any particular thing that sticks out to you formatively, like in that experience that you've been able to take through your life?
Mm. I think that part of my personality is to see where I fit in situations, to
Mm.
show up and kind of adapt or adjust depending on who I'm talking to, what the setting is, what the situation is. And being thrown into something so different, like being in Jerusalem, living in a Palestinian neighborhood during Israeli Independence Day, interacting with the people there, watching these very outward, overt sort of rituals and the way people practiced and lived their faith. So I
And you
think,
could you feel it? I told
oh,
people when I got home,
absolutely.
I could feel
The
the
history.
history and
Mhm.
also the tension.
Yep.
I remember saying many times when I got home, "You could cut it with a knife." That was the phrase that I said. I
Mhm.
don't know if that's because we said it there, but it was like
You
corporeal,
could
like
feel it.
you right? Okay,
Yeah,
so we yeah.
absolutely. And so I think when you're younger, all you know is what you're brought up in, right?
Yeah.
And so your idea of the world and how to navigate the world, or how to practice your faith, or how to be, I think that I, you know, thought that this is the way to be in the world, right? And so being exposed to something so different, you can't help but be curious, right? And try to understand, how did they get here? Like, what is it like to navigate the world and to in this place specifically, which has seen so much, it just has such a complicated
Strife and yeah.
history and people, and when you add when you overlay religion onto that, it makes it more
Mm. And
complicated,
multiple religions.
and I
We got a
think
chance to like learn from like a rabbi and then from
yeah.
a Muslim and then, like normally when you live in a place, you're not taking parts of everybody's lives in a short period of time and learning it. And I was just like, whoa, this is
And I think, the through line to the work that I do now is at living room conversations, one of the most common takeaways is I never thought of it that way. Like, oh, I never thought of it that way.
okay.
And so I think that's what, you know, m- that's really one of the big takeaways that I had from that study abroad as well is, oh, I never thought of it that way. Like
Gosh.
what would it be like to wake up one day, thinking about Israeli Independence Day, wake up one day and not have a country anymore. Something that's been called
Mm.
Palestine for thousands of years is no longer Palestine, it's Israel. And what would that feel like?
Yeah.
And then what would it feel like to have, part of your legacy be the Shoah, the Holocaust, and
Mm.
having had no home and then all of a sudden getting a home, right? So it's that
Mm.
understanding like, oh, if that was me, I'd probably feel the same way.
Yeah.
And I think that's the place that we want to get to when we think about things like dialogue and bridging
Especially
divides
conflict, right?
and
Like where
conflict. It's
I see
the
myself as wholly different than you, but really we have this common.
yeah.
It's so interesting because one of the things that really struck me is the ritualization of like religion because we had the call to prayer that
Yeah.
was happening
Yeah.
like viscerally again, like 5 times a day. People, I had never experienced that clear cut like devotion,
Mhm.
both with the Jewish wall where they were praying and
Yeah.
shaking, and then we have the call to prayer where people are stopping in the middle of the day and putting out the rug, and it was like it combined like very much external expression of
Mhm.
like religion,
Mhm.
and while I had some in my we had some in our faith, like it was bigger and louder and maybe more I use the word devotion because I remember like just falling in love with the Jewish people and just being like, oh my gosh, there's so much devotion, there's so
Mhm.
much, I mean, down to the food, down to the clothes, down to the whatever, there's a lot of ritual,
Mhm.
that I hadn't really up to that point really experienced anywhere.
Yeah.
It's so interesting that one of my most like takeaway experiences that I had in Jerusalem had nothing to do with like the space, which was informative in my life later because sometimes you can get really stuck in like where you are, or where you grew up, or your belief from how you grew up or how you see the world rather than like what's happening right here. So I
Mhm.
had a friend who I don't know why, but I kind of was just like he had traveled all over the world. Jerusalem was not his like first stop journey.
Mhm.
This was my first beg, steal, and borrow, ask my parents, get a scholarship. Like him from a family of 8. I felt so like grateful. And he would be talking about all these trips. And anyway, one day we're standing on the balcony at the Jerusalem Center on Mount Scopus, which was amazing. And I kind of had an attitude. I was kind of a little bit like, well, who are you to have like been able to travel
Mhm.
all over the world at this young of an age? Kind of thinking from my perspective that he must have a lot of money.
Mhm.
And boy, did I learn an integral lesson right there. And he was like, well, you work, right? You've been working. And he's like, where do you spend your money? And it was like, duh to me, because I was like, well, it all goes to college. It's all
Mhm.
like I'm working to pay for my semester to like, to not be in debt. And he goes, it was really interesting to me too, because he was like, well, didn't, I just barely started college. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, I took all my money and all my pennies from my jobs and I went and traveled. And it just shifted
Mhm.
irrevocably the way that I saw him. I don't know why I came from like a judgy place of just like, how could you do this to like oh yeah. And it also invited me to be like, I can spend my money however I want. It was the beginning of like, it was the beginning of
You
like,
can do that?
I mean,
Wow.
it sounds funny, but I think we need to give people permission, right? Like people create ceilings or their culture or their family create ceilings, thought errors. I'm in a therapist, so like I think that they're just like only
Mhm.
wealthy people,
Yeah.
only white people,
Mhm.
only this, only men. Like we just have these beliefs and those beliefs create ceilings and until someone's like, "Oh, so for me, that was like a oh, I want to travel the rest of my life, but there's going to be times and seasons. I got to finish college."
Yeah.
And then I was like, "Oh, I can travel and I'm going
Mhm.
to make sure that travel is a priority. So when I'm saving my money, there are other things I'm not going to
Yeah.
buy so that I can do that." But I'm not sure, like, before having this conversation with him, I guess all this is to say, I want to jump into living room conversations. You're having these formidable experiences about culture, about people, about conflict.
Mhm.
Even in the United States, you're moving from very different states of people and culture.
Mhm.
You're in North Carolina, right?
Mhm.
You're in New York City, or New York.
Mhm.
You're in Maine, you're in Utah, you're in Idaho,
Mhm.
Burley, Idaho, which has
Mhm.
its own culture from other places in Idaho. And how do you come to this? How do you come to the living room conversations and what sort of leads to this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, when we moved, we've been in Utah for about 10 years now.
Okay.
And I think that being part of a small farming community was great. And I learned so much from our time in Idaho. And then when I came here, I just felt this there were so many opportunities. There's so many things to plug into. I mean, we have the largest private university and largest public university in the state are
Yeah.
both, 10 minutes away from
Yeah,
each other. So
exactly.
there's just a lot of things to plug into. And I started just going to anything that was free on Eventbrite. Like I just
Okay.
started looking like what's around. I started going to entrepreneurial meetings. There was a women's entrepreneurial workshop, which is where I met our common friend Melissa
You
Seavey.
love her. Shout out to Melissa.
I just started showing up
Mm.
and trying to figure out where I fit. And I had one of my roommates from college, her husband was organizing this event in Salt Lake City. And so she invited me kind of as a way to, oh, I want to see you, come check out this event. And so I go, and there were two different groups of therapists that had been on the point of pursuing litigation against each other
Okay.
because they both said within our professional code of ethics, you can't be telling your clients what you tell them. And
Right.
so it was their LGBTQ plus
Right.
clients. And so they were saying, like, you can't do that. You can't say that. We're going to take you to court. So they had met over a series of weeks. And this event was the culmination where they were talking about that experience.
Interesting.
And
Oh,
so,
wow.
what the main takeaway was, I would still never tell my clients that, but I understand where you're coming from. And if I have clients who want what you offer, I'll refer them to you. And it
Mm.
blew my mind. It's like, this should be happening everywhere and all the time. We don't have to agree. We don't
Mm.
have to give up our values. We don't have to change who we are, but we can understand where someone else is coming from and see the inherent value in that. And so that planted the seed of that's what I want to do with my life. Like I would stay in conversations like this all of the time. This is amazing. And so I ended up getting a job working at the women's shelter, which was another kind of major stepping stone along this pathway where Provo, Utah leads the country in rates of charitable giving and volunteerism. Very generous community. At Christmas time, there were people donating violins, brand new phones, like
Wow.
just people are so generous. And at the same time, in order to work there, we had to go through this training. And there was this statistic that absolutely crushed me is that 1 in 3 women will experience intimate partner violence in Utah, and that's higher than the national average.
Mhm.
And I looked around, like I literally looked around in the room and I'm like, how are we not all freaking out about this? Like, why aren't we talking about this? We need to talk. And I think that in one of the things that I've noticed about the culture here is that there's a hesitancy to
Mm.
rock the boat.
Mm.
We like to be nice, we're
Preach.
neighborly, we care about people, right? But the hard conversations we don't have. And so I thought about these issues and things that I care about that are societal issues, right?
Mhm.
Or big political issues,
Mhm.
and they feel really heavy. But if you can take them down to the community level, and say, how is this impacting my community and where I live? And who are the people in my community that are being impacted? Again, this idea of expanding who you consider part of your community, because community and belonging, I think, are both pretty
Mhm.
nebulous terms and can mean a
Mhm.
lot of things to a lot of people, and it changes throughout your life too.
I just
And
wanna add one
so,
thing before you keep going, and also who is working to help this problem, because I think part of why we don't wanna rock the boat is because we don't wanna see the really ugly thing, because
mhm,
then we don't feel it we don't feel empowered, and so it's like,
like,
well, if I
what can I
can't do
do about
anything,
it?
then I won't talk about it. So
Exactly.
part of this is bring it down to the community so we can talk about it, but also, like, look around and pointing
Yeah,
to people, like, who are doing things so that you can
exactly.
either join up or at least in this overwhelming, like personally, I right now am a clinical director of a program that works with kids, and all we work with are kids that have been sexually abused or experienced sexual
Mhm,
exploitation.
mhm.
Man, every time someone asks me what I do, I used to just be like, "Oh, I'm an adolescent therapist," and everyone was like, "Oh, wow, wow, wow." Now I enter a conversation,
Yeah,
and I say, I almost try not to have anybody ask me what I do, because as soon as I say what I do, it's like wah wah wah
yep,
in the conversation, right? So I'm just
exactly.
saying, I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I feel like, so it's that societal level to the community level to the individual stories
Hmm.
of people who live in your community, because you can't sit across from someone and have them tell you your story, whether
Mm.
it's around immigration or opioids or whatever it is that they care deeply about, and not empathize with them.
Mm.
And I think we're stuck right now in a moment where we share opinions so freely,
Mm.
and this information sharing and opinion sharing does not foster connection and
Without
understanding.
accountability. I want to say that's another thing.
Also without
You're just on
accountability.
social
Exactly.
media shooting the breeze, and
Exactly.
there's no face-to-face accountability, which is
Mhm.
very different, right?
Yeah.
What's the
So
saying? Like you can't hate somebody close
up
up.
close. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so that's, I kind of, so it was those sorts of things where I was like, we really should be having these conversations. And I went to the mayor's office and
No
I
way.
said, I think that we should have community dialogue. I'd like to try. Will you support me? So my first ever conversation was on sex education. Melissa Seavey was there. We got to use the city council chambers. They got us a sponsor, so where there was a free dinner, and we had a panel of people kind of with different perspectives and roles when you're thinking about sex education. And then we had these small table discussions, and it was amazing, and I was hooked. And so I did it on my own for a couple of years before joining Living Room Conversations, which has now
Okay.
been 8 years of, you know, creating topic guides, crafting questions, trying to do everything to make it really easy. Like you said, things feel heavy and you don't see yourself as part of the solution
Mhm.
because it's too much and it's too big.
Mhm.
And so, really, what we are designed around is so that you can see yourself as
Mhm.
part of the solution. And
Yeah.
here's the simple thing that I can do, because conversation is a really simple yet impactful way to build connection and to share stories.
Right.
And that's what we need to sort of actually shift. It can't just be us saying, well, law enforcement should fix that. Congress should just, someone should just legislate.
We
Like, we
should
just
just
need a
go to
law. Like,
therapy.
just, it has to be a policy. Like, someone should just fix that for us, rather than saying, if I'm a community member,
Mhm.
what is my role and responsibility to care for the people in my
And I
community?
want to say even more in this particular community, as we're filming in Utah, there's a predominant like religion. Like I hear this, and I, especially as a single person for my whole life, there was a lot of in my different stages of being single. There was a lot of people saying like, "Oh, the church should solve that, or
Yeah,
the church should do that." And I
just
remember very
outsourcing.
early
Mhm.
being like, I just don't agree with that. And having nothing like to do with like the churches or anything right or wrong. Just having this like really innate strong belief in myself that like people need to activate their agency for good. This
Mhm.
is my like just build the well if it doesn't exist, because you're capable, because you can, because if you're saying the church should put this organization together, it's like, well, we are like working single adults, like we can put the thing together. You were
Mhm.
like, I can go into the mayor's office
We're
and
just gonna do it.
and let's be real, not everybody has that ability or their tenacity or even the like chutzpah to use a Hebrew word, but like to be able to say just like I think I can, therefore I do.
And really, it was being in those spaces when I was going to those random Eventbrite things where I listened to other women be like, this is my idea and I'm just going to try it. I was like, nobody has to give me permission.
That.
right? Like,
Yes. Please,
what's
everybody
the
who's
worst thing that
listening.
could happen? If I did
They
that
say
and they
no.
said no, then I'm right back where I was when I started. But if I do it and they say yes, and within the arc of 2 to 3 years, my life transformed. I had opportunities. I got to go to the UN and represent the idea of family capital. I spoke at the Provo Women's March. I started a courtroom monitoring initiative where we trained volunteers to sit in cases dealing with domestic violence, sexual assault, and child abuse, and like became an advocate. Like all of these things because I decided I wanted to do something. And I think so often we think about belonging as being passive.
Mm.
It is really active. If you don't feel like
Amen.
you fit, make the space where you fit.
Yeah.
Like
Or tiptoe
bring
into
the
spaces that you're curious
try them
about.
all out
Yeah.
and you'll be surprised, where you could fit. And so I didn't know this career existed. I didn't know this field existed. And now I serve on the Leadership Council for the National Bridging Movement, right? Like
Right.
it's knowing who you are, what's core to you, what your strengths are, and then just exploring all the different opportunities and saying yes, even if you feel like you don't. I mean, I feel like I don't fit still a lot of times. Imposter syndrome is real, but you know.
Let's talk a little bit about cognitive dissonance
Mhm.
because I think a lot of cognitive dissonance, which is kind of a therapy term for like when I believe something and then the action of something, right? Like, and people. This is what I do. I know sign language and so this is the sign for me. Like cognitive dissonance, in conflict. I think this is one of the things I have been saying for years as a therapist, as a teen therapist, where I sit and the worldview that I have in my job. I basically have been saying for years that like we have a pain tolerance problem
Mhm.
and part of the conflict pain tolerance problem is that like I can't sit in my cognitive dissonance. I can't sit or in other words, I have a really hard time being in the gray. It has to be like all or nothing. It has to be
Mm.
like black or white. It has to be it's it's Mormon or it's not Mormon, right? It
Mhm.
has to be like um this covenant or you're not that there's an inability for people to sit. I'll give a personal example. My sister was on like the Ordain a Women with Kylee and she was like very like into like helping the LDS church at the time to like open up their ideas and pushing on the door of like there's things that we want. And
Mhm.
I was an active member, but I am a feminist and I was like, yeah, there's many things on this list of things that they wanted. There was other things that I was just like not fighting for as well. So there was
Mhm.
this like space, right, where I
Mhm.
was like, I'm in for this. I'm not that in for this.
Yeah.
So if you want an all or nothing, I'm not in, I guess, right?
Mhm.
And it was really interesting. And I wrote this blog post that went kind of viral, both for the women that were like leaving the church that were feminists and women that were in it. It was called like, "Am I my sister's keeper?" Right?
Mhm.
Or I am my sister's keeper, and it was literally about my sister, but it was also about this idea of like, if all the women who feel and think and look different and want different things leave the church, then who's in the church to like model for the I mean for young men and young women, but I'm thinking specifically about young women that it is okay because it is for
Mhm.
you to think differently or to emphasize something differently or to see the world differently. And this was my like biggest fear. Like, don't everybody leave. I mean, you don't have to stay if it doesn't fit for you, but like I, as a like faithful member of my community and my church, was just like, I don't want everybody who thinks differently and feels differently to leave. And I don't want my community to make people feel like they have to leave. Like, we're better
Mhm.
together
Mhm.
in our like rub, I guess,
Yeah.
like than we are if we just bounce, if we
Yeah.
just leave where we are. I don't know if you have
Yeah.
thoughts about that.
Yeah. So a couple weeks ago now, I went to an event at BYU through the Wheatley Institute, and they had brought Cornell West and Robbie George together.
Okay.
So political thinkers on opposite ends of the spectrum who are also philosophers and religious scholars, and they're just brilliant, brilliant humans. And one of the things that they said has stuck with me ever since.
Yeah.
So they said, we all have false beliefs. The problem is we don't know which ones they are.
Oh gosh.
And so the only way to we have true beliefs and we have false beliefs, but the only way to identify the false beliefs is to open yourself up to having those beliefs being examined. And that happens when we are connecting, when we're talking to other people, when we're allowing people to challenge and offer what they believe. And then, so this search for truth is a collective process, right? And so I think about that and where we're stuck. You're talking about a faith context, and I think especially within faiths, right? All major religions. We were in Jerusalem, right? How many versions of Christianity are there? How many versions of Judaism? I like on the spectrum of Islam, there's a huge difference in the way people practice their faith. So I think that's one of the places it shows up. It also shows up in our politics.
Totally.
Right? Like we can look at the same thing and have the same underlying values and want basically the same outcome, but we go about it in very different ways.
Yeah.
And
or
we vote
carry a
very
banner,
differently.
Like, I'm a this.
Exactly. So we embody some of these labels and identities and who we are and our roles. And our brains are wired to make sense of the world around us. And so absent of this authentic conversation between two people, like you had in Jerusalem with talking about traveling the world.
Totally.
Our brain will make assumptions. It will fill that void with these cues that we think that we're perceiving about another person, whether it's what they post online, whether it's, who they vote for, what political sign they have out. We make a lot of assumptions. And the only way to solve for that, in my opinion, is to understand each other's stories. And that's,
Amen.
Tell me why you care about this issue. Why is it so important to you? What does it look like in your life? How has it impacted you or the people you care about? Tell me that story. And then I can replace that judgment that our brains are wired to do and is totally natural. We can't just not judge. Like our brains will do it for us. But we can replace that judgment with curiosity.
Okay, this is where my brain goes in this, because while I am like not only like capable and excited, but like I like live and die and want to like have a conversation with every single person and just like really want to get into it. There are quite a few people who are like, I hear what you're saying, Becca, but I just don't want to do conflict.
Yeah.
So I don't want to seek to understand you, because in that is so much a feeling that I have to defend myself. And so here's one of the things I really love about living room conversations that I really want you to talk to people about. If there's people that aren't like you and me who are just like all about it, the curiosity is just wild, right? And we're kind of like, I'll get myself and put myself in different and unique situations. I'll eat different food. I'll listen to different languages. That like fuels me. That's my dopamine, right? There are plenty of people who I think are willing and open, but they like, there's such a fear to overcome in this vulnerability space that like I am going to be judged, or that I'm going to have to defend my side, rather than the person across from the table is going to also be willing and seeking to understand, right? This is the big, what do you / living room conversations, how can you help people in that space?
Yeah. So I think the common and universal desire is we all want to feel seen and heard in our uniqueness. So we hold these roles and labels, but we know that we exist outside of that. Or you can't just say, I'm a woman, therefore this is my experience. It's so much more diverse than that. And so I think that can be sort of the nudge for you to try and engage. We all want to feel seen and heard. So maybe I can offer that to someone else, and you can start by listening. And that happens with asking good questions. I also really want to validate the hesitation for people to engage. And I did a survey. I go to the gym. I do a weightlifting class.
Love this.
And I was I wrote an op-ed for the Salt Lake Tribune ahead of the holidays. And so I wanted like a random sample of people. Would you talk politics with family?
Right.
And why would you? Why would you not?
Yes,
and I want to read a couple of the responses, because I feel like it was so, I think a lot of us feel this way. So someone said, it's all too polarizing nowadays. It feels like there's no middle ground. And if you don't agree with someone politically, it feels like all or nothing. Like if you hate their candidate, you automatically hate each other too. And I think that I ask people all the time when I travel, and present to groups and train people, I ask them, what are the conversations you wish you were having and what gets in your way? And overwhelmingly, the things that we want to be able to talk about are really, really important. It's immigration, it's mental health, it's school safety. It's big things that if we don't solve these, it's to our collective detriment.
Totally.
Right?
Yes.
And the things that keep us out of those conversations, it's fear of losing relationships. It's fear of being misunderstood or
Judgment.
Or our cancel culture that we've developed that doesn't really help anyone at all. It's not feeling like I know enough about the topic. Or
that's a big one.
It's
that people don't want to say.
Yeah,
on a survey, you don't want to say, I don't know enough about it.
I don't know enough about this.
And shame, because like if you've identified with a certain, let's just say politics for a minute, a certain like politics, maybe because your family did or whatever, and you haven't done enough research or whatever.
And you don't even know.
And you don't even know, but you're sort of saying, this is what I believe. You sit across from somebody who's pretty knowledgeable. There's a lot of shame that you're like, I don't even want to have that conversation because I don't want to look stupid.
Yep.
That has nothing to do with like, do we agree or disagree?
Yeah.
Because there is a fear sometimes when you don't know that the person who knows more is just going to like trump the conversation, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And then you're like, okay, well, which may or may not be true. There's plenty of intelligent people who can hold their tongue and like lean an ear, right? Yeah. But when you're on the other side of that, it's like, oh, if I'm not smart enough, if I don't know enough, and this isn't just politics, but yes,
yeah.
And
then the other biggest thing is that people feel like they don't have the opportunity. Like, how do I do this? Like, I don't know how to do this. I'm just gonna sit down with my uncle, with my dad, with my brother-in-law, and say, I don't agree with anything that you're posting online. Let's talk about it, right?
Yeah.
Like that feels like too much.
Yeah.
And so I would say I'm gonna make the case for why we have to do it, and then the ways that we can do it. Perfect. Where it's easy. So making the case for why we have to do it is there was research published in Time magazine recently, and it said that 1 in 2 American adults are estranged from a core family member. Oof. And within that group, and it's about 1 in 5 who are estranged because of politics. So sometimes we have good reasons for ending relationships. Sometimes it's that discomfort. We just don't want to sit there. We don't want to do it. I don't want to hear what this person has to say because maybe it'll change how I feel about them, or maybe it'll challenge something that I hold dear and don't want to give up. Right. So there's a lot of reasons why we stay out of conversation, and that's just what it is.
Right.
At the same time, we're in this epidemic of loneliness, like the U.S. Surgeon General said, where only 16% of people feel connected in their communities. That's a bleak statistic. Another really bleak statistic is that 15% of Republicans and 20% of Democrats say we'd be a lot better off if large numbers of the opposite party just died.
Wow.
Like that, we have to fix it. We have to do something about it, right? Like we can't continue to be such a fragmented society. And I think that if we focus on building connection rather than I have to talk about this issue, because really it's the connection and the trust that allows you, that opens doors to conversations. And so when I think about the work that we're doing, it's very much a huge library of resources. And we have conversations on listening, on communicating with care,
on belonging,
strengthening
Because
community.
I downloaded it and
on
read it.
belonging, right? And then we have the tougher ones, like let's talk about race, let's talk about politics, let's talk about, mental health,
sexual abuse.
We have like tough things that you can get into. But really, the first step is to commit yourself. I want to feel more connected. I have people that I care about in my life that maybe right now there are parts of me I can't share and there are parts of them they can't share because we don't know how to do this. We've lost the skill of being able to listen to each other in a way that we don't feel threatened or like we have to be in a defensive position.
Yeah, I want to share a quick example of this just because one of the things I love about Living Room Conversations is just the name.
Yeah.
Because it gives you an image that says we're not doing it like this.
Yeah.
We're not a podcast.
Yeah.
We're not sitting, hopefully it gives people permission to be like, you're not, hey, mom and dad, sitting at this, maybe you are, but I'm saying it hopefully brings down this idea of like, oh, we're just gonna like lean over to the people that we already love or the people that we already are with and we're going to start a conversation in our living rooms,
Mhm.
right? I started noticing in college, and I grew up in Oregon, which is very different. The culture there is very liberal compared to Utah, which is very conservative. And I also lived in Arizona. And I come from a big family, and so I'd collected a lot of different ideas, and I was always really curious. But then I became a therapist, and then nothing was off the table, I guess, for me.
Yeah.
It was sort of like nothing's too scary, I guess. You get
Because
to
you know how to do it. You know the questions
I
to
do know the
ask, you know how
questions.
to
So then
listen.
I became like sort of like like if you did one of those stop movies, it was like, oh, I'm sitting on a counter in someone's kitchen. I'm sitting on the edge of this table. I started to realize I physically was like anywhere and everywhere because I was on the floor of someone's bedroom. I kind of knew that like if I physically lowered myself or put myself in a where I wasn't above somebody even
Mhm.
physically, that like that also loosened the conversation. There was less like there was more peer and more and I've had many of these since, but one of the first kickoffs for me of this, what you're talking about being able to like maybe have difficult conversations but really safe, and then once you enter the conversation, you realize that everybody was wanting to have the conversation but nobody knew how to have
How
it.
to do it, yeah.
So my conversation was about pornography, and it was just about like I can't even remember what I said. It might have been that I had this conversation with a guy friend of mine, and anyway, I was sort of sharing with another girlfriend of mine. It was like at a side party, like there was a people, and we were like over in this other room, right? As
Mhm.
you are, um, and then it was really interesting because me and my girlfriend, who I don't know, but I think neither one of us had really experienced like struggling with pornography,
Mhm.
but we were kind of talking about this idea.
Mhm.
And then a guy friend of mine was like close to the conversation. I think he was like later, he
Could
was like,
kind of
I was
hear.
testing.
Yeah.
Like, is this safe?
Yeah.
How are they judgy? Are they shaming? And it was really open, and it was free of that, right?
Mhm.
And he physically kind of moved a little bit closer.
Mhm.
And then he's talking about his personal experience. He's being very vulnerable about like, things that worked for him, things that didn't work for him, people and conversations, groups that he attended. Um, and as he's being really vulnerable and open, another girlfriend of ours talks about dating a guy that like told her that he was, and she had a pretty good experience. Another girl was there, and she had a bad experience where like
Mhm.
this, and it was wild. It was like 3 or 4 or 5 people talking about pornography
Mhm.
in a public setting, in essence, right?
Mhm.
And I looked around and I was like, this is how we heal the world. I mean,
Mhm.
I know you believe this. This is why I'm like, this is how we heal the world. Not like, I mean, maybe it's pornography conversations, but I'm like, it is talking about things that are taboo,
Mhm.
but that almost everybody has a touch point to.
Exactly.
Because this is, right? Pornography, sex abuse, like you cannot avoid it. And yet
Mhm.
it's so ugly, and people like don't want to talk about it, but it is around. This is just the experience that I'm sharing from this place. But like how much connection, how much love, how much psychological safety,
Mhm.
how much like de-shamed, right? Nobody was feeling how free were different people to talk about and share their experiences. And I cannot help but think everybody left that space edified, changed,
Mhm.
opened. Like I hope like with an invitation to go do that again.
Yeah.
Maybe not even about pornography, right? But like, okay, we had this conversation I never thought I'd be talking about on the side party with people I didn't even really know had any connection to that same thing. And I didn't explode or blow up or turn into a puddle on the ground because people have these visceral
Yeah.
expectations of what hard conversations are going to happen. And then when they don't happen like that, it sort of reinforces the ability to do it again, we hope.
Yeah. And it filled that need of being seen and heard.
Gosh, yeah.
And that to me is the core of
And being safe.
belonging,
I would always add
right?
being seen and heard, but like I
Yes,
think
in
that
a
people want to
way,
feel
like where there's that
yes.
acceptance and understanding and connection that's being built
Yes.
rather than a performative like, well, everyone saw me and everyone heard me. Like that's
Yes.
a different
Or
thing.
that the strength of the conversation is that I need to be heard over you. That
Yeah,
there's that Covey
exactly.
principle, right?
Yeah.
Seek to understand before being
Uh-huh.
understood. And it's out there for a reason,
Mhm.
because if you're just pounding the fist about I need to be heard, I need to be seen, no one feels safe
Yeah.
to enter the conversation because you're voice is louder,
And
right?
I think, the experience that you just shared about your friend sharing his experience, that changes the tone
The
of a
whole
conversation,
conversation.
right? Because if we stay in that opinion space, like this is what I think, and this is what I think we should do, our brains are kind of catalogs of information too. So a topic can be brought up,
Mhm.
and your brain automatically sorts through and we're like, what are the experiences? Like, what are the things I can say about this topic? And so often we're like, oh, immigration, like, let me get on my soapbox and tell you my stance on immigration. But that's not as
Or even my
compelling.
experience, because experience sometimes people think like, well, it's my experience, but like someone else is looking at the same picture, seeing a different thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And I feel like though even to get to the experience is a step better than where
For
we're sitting.
sure.
Like so much we debate politics, we talk politics, and it's not necessarily like we don't offer our vulnerable stories
Yeah.
first, right? Like here's the struggle, here's the gray area I don't understand. Like I've had this friend who had this experience and that's why it's so important to me. Usually start out with like what's in the news, like what's currently going on, what should we do policy wise. So there's something about getting to the experiences that start to build the connection and understanding. And while that happened organically for you,
Mm,
there are a lot of people that don't have the relationships or the opportunities or the settings where that can happen. And
yeah.
I think about being in college and being single and there were more opportunities like that.
Mhm.
Like when I think now, I still organize living room conversations even with my friends.
Mm.
And there are people that I've known for years, and I can be in that sort of setting where we're asking a different kind of question, where we're setting aside the time and intention to just be in conversation with each other that surfaced things I didn't know that people were going through or experiences they had.
Yeah, and I guess I want to dig in a little bit on this and get your thoughts about this. I'm often saying to people like people are not like the one thing. They're not the thing they believe in politics or
Yeah.
the religion that they have or the sexual identity that they are. While these things are important to people, they're a whole bunch of parts.
Mhm.
Right? They're a whole and they're not the combination of this one thing or the worst day of their life as a therapist. I'm like,
Right.
this is you're not the result of the worst day of your
Yeah.
life or your unspeakable thing, right? You've
Mhm.
got and the interesting thing about difficult conversation, crucial conversations, whatever you want to call them, living room conversations, is that we enter and we often see the person as that thing. But they're
Mhm.
they're not that thing. They're a whole bunch of things
Yeah.
that led them to that thing. And sometimes I think the and from where I'm sitting, the easiest or the best way to enter difficult conversations isn't necessarily that conversation.
Yeah.
Like at a Thanksgiving dinner, my family's not going to talk about Trump
Right.
because we have lots of differing and strong opinions
Mhm.
about that. But we're also not going to say like because you believe this or you believe that, that's all you are. We're going to talk about maybe some of the topics or some of the things that
Mhm.
are like on both sides of that. Um, and or other things that unite us so that we can get to a place where we can have a conversation about those difficult things like
Right.
you're saying. I think sometimes people feel like they have to just like hit the nail on the head, and part of me says okay, there might be places where you do that, where you just really have to sit and like it's enough problematic that you really just do have to like have that conversation. But
Mhm.
most people, and like you said, most times you're sort of seeing people in their humanity,
Mhm.
and I'm a human with all my faults and all my strengths, and you're a human with all your faults and all your strengths, and we're
Mhm.
going to come together and we're going to do the best that we can to like not have a zero sum game
Yeah.
conversation. And this is what always comes to my mind. It's like, what does that do for us collectively? Like you said, what does that do for us to sort of build our walls, build our fortify where we are, right? And everyone's just divided.
Mhm.
Everyone sort of like feels like justified in their space, but we're very lonely, we're very disconnected,
Mhm.
right? um One of the things I really like about living room conversations, like you said, they have all these resources. So I want to say to people, like, go to the website. And if there's any of these conversations, like if you need a conversation starter or how to do it, you guys have made it
Mhm.
really easy.
Yeah.
You've broken it down. You sort of, are there places that people can watch this happen?
Yeah, so we have recorded conversations on our website. We also do staff-led conversations almost every week, so
Okay.
you can just sign up and join one of those. And I would say this sort of thing is a practice.
Mm.
like we talk about, we develop practices, right? Things that we do often. Um, and listening is a practice. Answering questions, sharing stories, this is all a practice. And so the structure of something like, a living room conversation has 3 different question rounds. So you start connecting, to your point,
Yeah.
on shared values.
Right.
Like, what would your friends say about who you are?
Yeah.
What purpose, duty, sense of mission, and what drives you in life, what motivates you? And so we're going to humanize each other before we get into the
Right.
topic.
Important.
And then the topic questions really draw out your personal experience. So, what's your backstory? What are you bringing to this idea? What role have guns played in your life? Where did you learn about guns and from who? Like, tell me your backstory. How is it affecting you right now? What are your hopes and concerns for the future? So you don't have to know. I don't have to know about current gun policy
Right.
to be a part of this conversation and to add my own experience to it. And then we have a reflection round. So this structure helps to disrupt our conversation habits and norms, because we do have communication and a lot of times they're not good habits, and especially with friends and family, they're not great habits, right? And so bringing a tool in to say, can we practice this together? Like, I just heard this thing, I want to try it out, would you be willing to come over? Let's have a conversation. So there's that piece of it where you have this structured way to hone your own skills that then you can apply to other places of your life. And out in the wild, I always talk about, there are ways that you can do this too. And one of the best things to do is to bring it back to personal experience.
Always,
so
right?
If someone is like ranting, they share a YouTube video, they post something on social media, to just say, can I share an experience I've had with that?
Yeah.
Have you ever had an experience with that? Like, how has this issue, how is it impacting, you right now? So tell me the story around this, because that's where I can stay curious. And that's something that you can do.
Totally.
And you talked about, even one-on-one, I've done this where we've tried to simplify the process of good dialogue as much as possible. And that's what our library of resources are. But I was thinking, can I push this even further? Like, what's the actual core, like the minimal amount of structure that you need, or design, or way to create this safe, like you mentioned, like a safe environment where people feel like they can talk. And I think it's 3 things. I think it's setting aside the time and intention for a conversation.
Carve it out.
Right?
Yes.
Like, move it from the family group chat to, can we go on a walk? It looks like you really care about this and I'd love to hear more.
Yeah.
So set aside some time and intention. Kind of embody. The second is to have one of these core bridging skills. Like, I'm going to focus on listening during this conversation. And whether you say that out loud, like, I'm working on listening and I'd love to just listen to you. You can say that, or just in your brain say, focus on listening. And when I'm listening, I'm not focusing on the content.
Listening to understand,
on the
not
words,
listening to answer.
Exactly. So I'm listening for feeling. I'm listening for meaning. Like, what are they actually trying to communicate and convey? That's what I'm focusing my listening on. And then,
can I pause for just a second?
Yeah.
Because most people listen to respond.
Exactly.
And therefore they're not listening.
Yeah. And again, this is like, our brains are wired to do some of this, right? So it's how do so you have to tell yourself.
You have to.
Or I'm going to focus on empathy. And I'm just going to try and feel what they're feeling. I'm going to focus on curiosity.
I'm going to retell them what I thought I heard.
Exactly.
Because that process really, they're like, oh, that's not exactly.
And then they can fix it. But you can say, I'm really sensing that this is important to you, or you've had a hard time, or I can feel that you're frustrated. Like, just name the things that you feel are coming off of that person. So it's time and intention. It's have one of these, like, the big 3 are listening, empathy, and curiosity.
Yes.
Like, that's what makes good dialogue. And then the third one is to ask better questions.
Ugh.
And again, these
not
are sort
leading
of
questions.
These are sort of the ones where it's like, tell me about that. Like, have you had an
tell me more.
Like, get to those experiences and follow up with a tell me more. And if you can do those 3 things, you can be practicing really good dialogue anywhere. And good dialogue, the way that we describe it and think about it, is it builds connection and understanding. That's the end product. You're not convincing each other. You're just getting to the point where you feel more connected, like that conversation you had with that group of friends where you're like, wow, I've seen this other part of you, and you naturally feel more connected and you understand other people. And you get to the point where you're like, I never thought of it that way.
Totally. And you're right. Like, nothing changes a conversation and is more powerful in a conversation than someone's vulnerable personal experience, right? Like, you were right. Like, that that conversation was very different from the point. I had a similar conversation. I run like a fireside choir, and there was a few of us that were after putting things away, and we had a similar kind of conversation like this. And again, a different topic, but like the person shared their personal experience, and boy, I mean, I almost ended up in tears because of
Mhm.
how shift the conversation
Yeah.
went because of that person and the invitation that that person's vulnerability, because we know vulnerability invites vulnerability,
Yeah.
right? And that invites really like crazy awesome connection. It's a
Yeah.
different kind of connection when you're, and I don't even think they have to be the same experience, right? Like my experience, your experience, but we're sharing. It's interesting to me, and I kind of want to ask you also on this topic. I have found that as a therapist, because I couldn't give more like try the tools
Mhm.
because I spent a lot of my life giving parents and teens and people tools
Mhm.
that they are coming and paying, but like they're like, I don't know about that. And then they do them and they're really life changing.
Mhm.
Like even just learning like I feel statements or like, and so when you're saying, yeah, like get a tool and try it, I just want to validate that. I want to say it's okay if it feels awkward
Yeah.
because if it leads to the connection that you're looking for to have the conversation, then it's okay that you used a tool, right?
Yeah.
Rather than just trying. And I think that, like you said, we have thinking errors, we have beliefs that we carry, we have blind spots,
Mhm.
and maybe we don't have the time or the energy or the money to go figure that out. So like use a tool that like someone's already said this is how
Yeah.
we can do it, to sort of sit down and like we can just both admit this is kind of interesting
Yeah.
because like I'm doing the thing and you're doing the thing.
Yeah.
Eventually, kind of like this podcast where there's cameras and things, but then we're starting to have a conversation and it's just a
Mhm.
conversation.
Yeah.
Like whatever tool you brought to the table disappears into the conversation you're having
Mhm.
person to person, right?
Yep.
So if you can do that without it, great. But if you can't, like there's nothing wrong with entering a script or entering um and so I love that you guys have that in all kinds of topics.
Yeah.
So I'm like shouting out again to like go there. Maybe even give yourself a challenge about like picking one of those and have pick a person that you want to have that with.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be somebody who has like so much conflict. Maybe you just try it with somebody who you're safe with and
Yeah.
that you can just try the skill, right? Of just like having the conversation. One of the things I thought about a lot when I was thinking about you coming on this podcast was what travel changes and transitions, what that does for a person in their ability to sort of see and feel differently. And then maybe let me put this in perspective. When I talk about therapy, I often talk about therapy like being in a boat. If you're doing good therapy, you're kind of off. Like you don't feel really good about it, but you shouldn't feel like you're like dumping
Mhm.
out of the boat, right? And the therapist is kind of like going to challenge you and like sometimes you have really difficult conversations, sometimes you have like oh that felt good, right? I feel like when you're out of your normal or your comfort zone when you had to change somewhere like and I'll just use travel because we've both done a lot of
Mhm.
travel when you're trying different foods when you're doing different things it seems like it's a little bit easier to um, have conversations that you maybe wouldn't have when you're in your safe places and you're doing your same things
Mhm.
and what you're doing. So I'm curious for you, like it seems to open up flexibility. I'm just going to say flexibility in
Mhm.
thinking when people are a little bit out of their like
Comfort.
comfort.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in hearing what your thoughts are about that. Having had so many different conversations in so many different places.
Yeah. Honestly, I think it's really exciting.
Okay.
So I did a humanitarian trip, and me and one of my kids, we went to Zambia to do this humanitarian trip. And in the training, the instructor drew a big circle, and there was this tiny little sliver triangle. So I would say like 1% and 1%. So two tiny little triangles, and then the whole rest of it. And one of the little slivers was what you know, you know. Like
Okay.
there are some things that you know that you know.
Yeah.
The other little sliver is what you know you don't know. Like there are a lot of things that I absolutely know I have no idea about, like theoretical physics
You're
or
right.
fixing an engine. Like absolutely do not know that.
How does a cell phone
Yeah,
work?
exactly. And then like the other 98% is what you don't know you don't know.
Right.
And that's a really exciting place to be because there's so much to explore and learn and understand. And so I think that's when you're traveling, you're naturally in that state of
Totally.
exploration, right? But it applies to every aspect of your life, right? There's so much that we don't know about the people closest to us,
Totally.
about our community, about ourselves even. Like we're constantly discovering new things about ourselves. And so if you can adopt that mindset and just accept it as fact,
Totally.
most of the things we don't know, we don't know. Like
Yeah.
that's most of life and our experience as human beings is we just don't even know that we don't know it. And I think that can give you a little bit of grace to get in those uncomfortable spots and to approach it more as this is exciting. I'm discovering things. Like it's uncharted territory. I don't even know what I don't know about this situation.
I don't think
And
you
so
have to
how
travel,
can I do that?
right? Like you just
Right.
said, like we're here in Utah, but wherever you are, there's like a whole world you don't know,
Oh, absolutely.
in your community. Restaurants you haven't eaten at, places you didn't, shelters you didn't know existed.
Exactly.
Organizations you've never heard about. They're like in your neighboring like place. And so part of me wants to say, if you're feeling sort of perfunctory in your life, like I show up, I do the thing, whether it's as a mother, whether it's in your religion, whether it's in your whatever, if you're feeling conflict in that, like you don't really know what's going, like any kind of stepping out. You said, and I loved what you said from the very, very beginning of this podcast, I went to a bunch of Eventbrite. That's a great example. Go. I mean,
up.
never have we had more resources or ways or even like, hey Siri, tell me what's going,
Yeah.
we've even like taken the ability away from our brains almost. I don't feel great about this, but I'm just going to say this too. Like, just be like, you can just ask a bot now. Tell me where there's things that I can do. We have all kinds of places, but I'm not even saying like, say you're a person that's listening and you're just like, I don't love to be social, right? Okay. Is there a hobby that you want to try or see that you've never done? We have Amazon that will drop it off at your door. There, to me, it's like any ability to sort of look at the world differently, to do this tip. This is why I'm doing this, to sort of tip us out of the way we see the world and we interact in the world cannot help but like shift us physically, shift us emotionally, shift us, and I think however you do that, this is the thing. You talked off about like how much you like the camaraderie with the people that you work out with. Like even from taking pictures of your clothes. And I think, okay, those people exist in your life because you decided to exercise.
Yeah.
Or you met somebody and how did you get to that group?
I had a neighbor that wanted to go. And she was like, does anyone else want to go?
There you go. Okay. And now that's a community of
and now
ours.
it's like a
it's
much,
a well, right?
It's a bigger community. And taking pictures of our clothes, when we accidentally match, we always take a picture.
Sorry.
So a little bit of context to like, I'm not going to the gym to take pictures of people's clothes. Like, but yes.
Your story of telling me that tells me it's more than lifting.
It is.
You know what I'm saying?
We've had potluck, like picnic lunches, and let's all get together. And then, as I organize, because I love being involved in my community, and as I organize, I'll text the group chat that we have now of all these people who attend the same weightlifting class at the rec center.
I'm single, but in my little neighborhood in Saratoga Springs where I live, almost everybody's married and has kids, and they have just adopted me, and I've adopted them. We love each other, and every once in a while we have a potluck or whatever. And I don't know that if we didn't do that I would even know my neighbors.
Exactly.
Right? Because I go to work and I come home and I'm not necessarily walking around at people's. I have to pay very close attention when I'm backing out because often kids are zooming by in the back. This might be my interaction.
Yeah.
And I couldn't be now. And my neighborhood is really transient. So when I first moved in, I was like, oh, I'm not. It was so heartbreaking when people would move that I was like, I'm not going to get to know any of my neighbors anymore. I kind of had an attitude of they hurt me. They leave because this is a place where people sort of are building homes. And then eventually I just was like, if I'm going to stay, I have to accept that people are going to come and go. So maybe I'm not going to be long-term friends with them, but I'm going to be a community friend. Does that make sense? While they're here, we are going to whatever. We're going to share ice. My neighbor sometimes, not this year because we didn't get any snow, but last year we got a bunch of snow. I didn't necessarily buy ice. He would put some ice on. I mean, it's just... I think that there is this feeling, you talked a little about the epidemic of loneliness, and I love following Julianne Holdstad's stuff about, and she's been working with the Surgeon General. She's out of BYU, about the statistics and things that she's showing. And I think that people know They know we're an epidemic of loneliness. They
You
know,
feel it.
and they feel it. But I often think people don't know. I guess I want to blow in people's cells to just like, I call it turtling. Just stick your head out of the turtle
Mhm.
shell in whatever way you can, right? Just take an
And it
effort.
doesn't have to be huge,
That.
right? Like it's maybe I go to the same neighborhood grocery store often and I just stop and talk. Or instead of doing
Mhm.
self checkout, I talk to the cashier and have a
Mhm.
human connection. So there's like that really, really basic level. Or like what you're talking about with neighbors and you get to know them, then, or any group threads, chat threads that you have. Look at what's going on at the library. Look at if there's city events. Maybe you haven't ever been to the farmer's market and just drop a message and say, I want to try going to the farmer's market. Anyone want to come with me? Or we just had Sundance. I really want to watch. I started texting people and being like, I would love to have like a book club, but it's a film club and we just watch some of the Sundance movies. Who wants to do that, right? Like just put yourself out there and extend the invitation
Well,
and like create those moments of connection so you have even a small base to build on.
this
It doesn't have to be really heavy, but asking and trying to and then you can move in different spaces in your community,
totally.
right?
And
Like because you don't want to go by yourself. It's weird. Like here's this Eventbrite thing. I'm not showing up by myself. I'm not as weird as Becca is. So like maybe I just ask
or
a couple
Kylee,
of
because
friends like who
I'm
wants to
always
come
by
with me
myself.
because
Yeah.
I would like to do this, right?
Yeah.
And that's how I think we're waiting for. We want those opportunities.
Mm,
We may be hesitant to create them ourselves. I think we need to realize that it's a lot more simple.
totally.
It takes a lot less effort than we think it does, and that everybody likes to be invited.
And I want to say, you said this earlier, so I want to emphasize this. On the other side of that, say yes.
Yeah.
Say
Just say
yes.
yes.
When people, there's a group that I did a bunch of watching the Banff Film Festival. So I
Mhm.
was down in Arizona, and it was down in Tucson, I think, was where I first got invited. But a couple friends who were like kind of obsessed, and they just, hey guys, the Banff Film Festival is amazing. I didn't know anything about it. But then I realized that group was like hardcore. Like we went and saw it in like there, then we went and saw it in like Phoenix, I think. Some of them moved up to Utah, so we went and saw it up in Salt Lake. I've seen the Banff Film Festival for not being a person who even knew what Banff was or like what the film festival was. I've seen it many times.
Yeah.
But that's because someone else had a really big passion for
And
it.
you
And
said
they
yes.
and I said yes.
Yeah.
And now I think I'm a Banff Film Festival girl, right?
Yeah.
Like, but this idea of like you sharing your passion and inviting people, and then somebody saying yes. I
Yes.
often tell people in therapy too, like, this is how you change a behavior.
Mhm.
This is how you change something. This is how you invite connection. Is you have to say, you have to take a chance. You
Mhm.
have to say yes. You have to be willing to try something new. Now sometimes it's bangering and you love it, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's that's not for me. I
Yeah.
tried that and that's not for me. Hopefully then you say yes to the next thing that
Yeah.
you're doing rather than saying no.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a big overarching question? You have sat in many amazing opportunities. You sat in many rooms, you sat in lots of conversations. Are there any particular like threads, pull throughs, things that stick
Mm.
out that sort of hold a common core? Yeah, for you. It's kind of an open-ended question, but
That is an open-ended question. I think kind of again it's the trends that I see happen most often is that um again, we all want to feel seen and heard and everybody appreciates that. The other one is I was in a conversation a couple weeks ago online, and one of the women said, I had no idea how much 1 hour of listening could change my day, right? It doesn't have to be a lot. So that's the other thing. I mean, we're talking about 60 to 90-minute conversations, in specifically what we do in our work, but it's that human touch point. It can change your day, it can change your week, it can change your month, it can change your life. Like it's just it's so powerful, and I've been in a lot of conversations and they're always different because you're essentially co-creating a product with the people in the conversation with you that wouldn't happen if one of the people was missing
mm,
or if there was a different group of people. And so that's the other thing that I see as kind of a through line. And then just being listened to as a gift.
mm,
It happens so rarely
being heard, yeah.
in our fast-paced life. I have this checklist. I'm a huge list person
Yeah.
and like check boxes and this is what I have to get done today. And you get stuck in that just having the space and time
Yeah.
to have someone ask you a question and you get to articulate what you think about that or what your experience is around that and have someone listen to you is huge. It
Mm.
makes such a difference. And then the other thing that I would say, like in all of these conversations, is structure really does help.
Mm.
And when we talk about structure, it's these, I talked about the different rounds of questions, but it's also these agreements. So
Mm.
I'm going to show up and I'm going to listen and be curious. I'm going to show respect and suspend judgment. I'm going to be authentic and welcome that from others. Like knowing that that's what you can expect of a group, being in spaces like that is increasingly rare as well.
Yeah.
And so that's part of what helps. And then the other thing that I always hear and feel in these sort of structured dialogues, we have timed portions, right? So we're like, you have 1 minute to answer the question of your choice, and everyone's going to be quiet. And then we're going to have 2 minutes for you to answer one of these topic questions, and no one is going to interrupt or speak until we've heard from everyone, and then we can have a conversation. And that like
Love that.
opportunity to just think about listening and to know that you're going to have 2 full minutes without being interrupted to just say what you want to say and to choose how you want to answer can also be really, really powerful. And the other through line I said, which you mentioned, once you experience it, you want to keep doing it. And then as you keep doing it, like we've had actual external research that shows that once you continue doing it, you start applying it to other areas of your life.
Yes.
So then it's like, oh, I invested a little bit, right? But then it really is this ripple effect of like, I'm bringing it into the workplace. I'm bringing it to my family relationships. I'm bringing it to how I interact online. Like that there are ways that it just starts to become part of who you are when you have, maybe a more awkward, structured way to practice. It helps you to see the thing in a different way. Like unto you, I mean, you've mentioned travel a couple of times, but it's like using a structured dialogue format.
Totally.
It's like new territory. It's like visiting a new place, doing a new thing. And
Yes.
so you bring that newness to it, which makes it more impactful and more sticky. And it also helps you to then keep doing it or keep applying it to different parts of your life.
Gosh, I love that. We often say that we can't unsee things, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And in the context of this, I often say, and we can't unfeel.
Yeah.
Like once you're swimming, I don't like
Mm-hmm.
we did it early. I feel like not everybody does it as early as we did. But once you can feel what it feels like to have a connection, one-on-one or in a small group, that's like you're swimming in like the goodness, like the stuff, like you don't ever really not want to have it, right?
Yeah.
Like I want everybody in my life. I mean, this is why I'm doing the podcast. I want to model over and over and over and over if people watch it, like what it feels like to sit with somebody. It doesn't matter who they are.
Yeah.
Like everybody has a story to tell.
Yeah.
And ask them some good questions about their life and like what the feeling that feels and when people are listening. And the hope, right, is that people will then be like, oh, I want to have that kind of a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe there's some things I can take from the questions I'm asking or whatever, but this idea of like that, like you can't unfeel it, right? And that you're going to go have it in other places. Okay, I have just a couple more questions. Can we talk about the teen council?
Yes.
Talk to me as a teen lover. I just love the power of teens. I've been a teen therapist my whole career. And I don't really know. I don't know why it's there, but on your website, I mean, I don't know anything about your teen council, so I'm really excited for the why, the who. I will say this as someone who just like pulled up the website, it's a very diverse teen council, which I also was just like cheering.
Mm-hmm.
Hurrah, hurrah. I know that's intentional. Can you tell me about why you have a teen council and what's the importance of them and the role that they play?
It was about, I think 5 years ago. So it wasn't early on. It wasn't always a part of living room conversations. Okay. And I think that the rising generation is incredible.
Yes, amen.
They care so deeply. They naturally want to take care of others, and they have this they're also more wise than you give them credit for, right?
Creative.
And so one of the things that I feel like, your podcast is the belonging place. Mm-hmm. There are places we sense we don't belong. Like I have not been invited to that table. I'm not just going to show up at that table. And so I think, our demographics trend older, right? Like of
Mhm.
people who use our resources. But then we would see a lot. We did stuff in secondary schools as well, where we can pair classrooms across the country to have conversations. So they
Okay.
have a living room conversation on topics like classroom to classroom. Um, and so we were like, we should have, a youth council. We should have
Get it from the
these people that
source.
care. And so we did sort of an open call, and we had the most incredible people who show up who I mean, I did a series of conversations on the golden rule at my local high school. And when you sit and ask someone a question, like one of these students, ages 14 to 18, the answers they give you, it's like they just need to be asked. They just need to be invited. They know what to
Invited to the
do.
table.
They don't need us to like tell them what to do and to train them. They already know. They already have ideas. They already are very aware of their experience. And so what our youth council does is they will host events and conversations online. They have one coming up on media and polarization in the beginning of April. And so you can come and they host the conversations. That's the other nice thing about our model is it's designed that anyone can do it,
Mhm.
right? And so it allows them that leadership to kind of step in and do it. They adapt some of the topics to a youth context. So we have a mental health for youth because there are a lot of other specific things that youth handle and are facing rather
For
than
sure.
adults, right?
Yes.
Like and the world is changing
Yes.
so rapidly, right? So they also do that. This past year we kind of follow their lead, like what's the thing that you want to do. And
Mhm.
so last year they created a program called Youth Voices in Action, where they
Okay.
said we want to take dialogue. They were thinking about, we all have these debate clubs, right? And so what if we had dialogue clubs, or what if you could move from dialogue to understanding a position better by seeing both sides, which is debate-y, and then move it toward action. And so we had these students who picked issues they really cared about. They had a dialogue around it to surface different perspectives. Then they had to do some research, or what are the like opposing different sides of things. We worked with Future Caucus and Voters of Tomorrow, so they got mentored by people, and then they presented these
Oh my
projects.
gosh, I love
And
that.
it was absolutely amazing. And then it was like, and then I'm going to take this to my city council or to my state representative of my state legislature. And just opening the door is really what
Mm.
it is.
I
It's
just
not anything else. It's
yes.
just opening the door because, yeah.
I mean, I just want to validate um that yes, they don't need us to necessarily they know what they know, but many times you do need to be invited to the table.
Yeah.
Like, and the minute you're invited to the table, the whole room changes,
Yes.
right? Like,
Hmm.
I imagine that you guys think differently now that there is a table, there's a youth council
Hmm.
in the living room conversations, right? Like, you guys are doing multiple things, which I love. But yeah, I wanted to highlight and I wanted to validate and I wanted to say like, I love that. I think that's amazing, and I love that they have a voice. And I really love that what you just said, which is just like that they are empowered to sort of tell you this
Yeah.
is what we want to do. And then, like we said, we don't know what we know, so give them some mentors and give them some people, but empower their voices. And I love that.
Yeah, and also the out in the wild sort of aspect of this is ask your kids better questions. Like the teenagers in your life, the high school students in their life, ask them better questions and
No
you'll be
more. How
so
did you do? How was your
surprised.
day? Let's
Yeah, how
strike
was your
it.
day? What did
Strike
you
it.
do in school today? Like, ask them better questions. Ask them if they've been following the news and what they think about it. Ask them where they find their news. You can engage in better conversations with them, but I think they have so many opportunities. There's so many opportunities out there that I didn't know existed
Yeah.
when I was that age. And so just opening the door, pointing out a resource, an opportunity as something they can do. Yeah, there's so many amazing things going on.
I love that. We could probably talk for 5 hours, but I'm going to
Yes,
ask
that's
you the
true.
last two questions. My second to last question is this. Um, this is both you, Becca, and
Mhm.
also you in your position at living room conversations. You're what I call a spinning person, a generative person. You're
Mhm.
always thinking. You're always. I mean, I can tell just from the
Mhm.
conversation and what I know about you from the past. I find this a kindred spirit. Not everybody spins on this level or this energy, but as you look to the future, this is a very therapy thing I'm going to say to you. I'm
Okay.
going to give you the magic wand, and basically, the magic wand says, as you look to the future of your role, either at the living room conversations or just sort of where you are in this kind of dream job that you have,
Mhm.
what are some things that you are excited about or that you want to build in the future? Remember, you have the magic wand, so they don't have to
Mm,
need to make sense, or you don't need to have the money, or you know,
yeah.
it's the dream big question. Like, what does it look like in the future?
So there's this fantastic study that came out through More in Common called the connection opportunity. And so they asked people across different lines of difference, how willing are you to engage and what facilitates that? And the number one takeaway is my vision for the future. So
Okay.
the biggest thing was, if it's perceived as normative, if everyone else is doing it, then I want to do it.
Mm,
And then they also said that once you start doing it, they call them connection cascades.
I
Once you
love this.
engage, then it just keeps going. Like you keep doing it and keep wanting more. And so I feel like it's not very pie in the sky, right? It's
No.
just that more people see themselves in this effort to be better connected. And then they talk about it.
Yeah.
And as they talk about it, it becomes something that's normative. And so I think that the future that I envision is that it is normative to disagree in a better way, that
Gosh,
it's normative to create these connections across real and perceived differences and to just tell people about it. Like this should be what we do. This is how we started as a country,
yeah.
really.
Mhm.
Um, there's this great report by American Academy of Arts and Sciences. It's called Habits of Heart and Mind, and it's about civic culture. And one of the things they said in it is America is best understood as an argument.
Mm.
That's how we
We
got
argued better
here,
when
right?
we started.
Like
Yeah.
we did argue it, but we can get back to
We
it.
can.
And it's doing the thing, it's trying to connect and understand each other. If we want to live in a thriving pluralistic society, we can't only talk to people who we perceive to be exactly like us with the same opinions. That's not what pluralism is. That's not what, a healthy democracy is. It's this engaging. And so that's what I wish and hope for, is just that it becomes normalized.
Yeah.
And whether that's through people using a tool like we have or not, I want that to be the norm that we accept and talk about, because right now we have this national narrative of division, and it's heavy and it's terrible and it's like filling everything. We feel it, right? And we have a ton of people working to connect across differences. We have a lot of people leaning into this type of work, but that narrative is being smothered.
Well, and it's not as loud as these other
It's
voices.
not
I
as
tell people all the
loud.
time,
Exactly.
man, the voices that you hear do not
They're
represent
the most
the
extreme.
majority of the people.
Yeah.
And people are very squashed. That's just the word I use, or very dampered by the voices that they hear the loudest.
Because media
right?
and social media is designed to capture instant attention. And that's done with more extreme
Yes.
things that you have a
Yes.
reaction to and you're like, ooh, let me see about that. Like and you kind of engage and share it. But if
Knowing
we can
they're outliers, though, is
flip
important.
that
Yes.
and we're like, what we value is we all want to feel more connected. We all want to
Yes.
feel seen and heard. Like we know these things are better for us. We just need, this upswell of people engaging and talking about it and saying, I just did this thing and isn't it great?
Yeah.
To be able to shift our norms towards something that we all want. Like there are conflict profiteers. There are people that don't want this.
Right.
But they're much
so few.
smaller group than everyone else who's feeling
Yeah, and I
they
just
want
want
to
to
be
add
more
to that.
connected.
I do think there is this adage that's going around that like hurt people hurt people.
Mhm.
And that sometimes the loudest voices you're hearing are people like I talk about primary and secondary emotions. Like anger is a secondary emotion. It's never a primary emotion. So
Mhm.
when you are seeing or hearing people, this is an invitation I guess I'm giving to people. Like when you see and hear people be angry in any context, underneath that secondary emotion is a primary emotion.
Mhm.
And if we can ever just like try to think about what is that primary emotion, we've already
Yeah.
let go of sort of like, are they hurt? Are they feeling pain? Are they feeling loss? All of these are more primary emotions. And this reaction, this is often what especially friends of mine that I've known for years, when they say very polarizing things that
Yeah.
sort of get me like,
Yeah.
I'm not ever gonna get on. I'm not one of those people that gets on and like defends the cause. But I often feel a little bit like hurt or pain by
Mhm.
like, oh, that's a friend of mine that's saying this very hurtful thing, and I know them,
Mhm.
and I don't love what they're saying, but I love them, and then I try to be like, something must have happened, or they must have experienced something, or I try to humanize so that I'm not getting stuck in you are this.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. My last question, and then we're gonna tell everybody where they can find your stuff. Is just the basic question of like, what does belonging mean to you?
Yeah. Um, I feel like I've said it in a couple of different ways, but it really is this ability to feel seen and heard and accepted.
Mm,
That
I
I can
see.
just show up. I don't have to change so much of who I am, but there's this place where I can be
Mm-hmm.
in the world, in all of my imperfections and all of the other things. And I think that the thing that I'll reiterate as well is that that doesn't always have to be a passive
Mm,
process. It's something that you work toward and you can create that for other people.
mm.
Because sometimes belonging feels like a very almost self-centered, like I want to belong somewhere, like I want to be accepted. Why do I feel excluded? I want to be included. And there's part of that, but it's also, then what do I do for other
Yeah.
people? Like
Can
how
I
do I help
can
other
I
people
ask you
kind of
even more?
feel
Like,
more included?
pull it out. Where are some places that you feel like you belong?
Oh, I mean, I'm really good at creating community. I
Yeah.
feel like I've carved out pockets of places that I feel like I belong. So sometimes, which is interesting when you think about community, because sometimes it's like people that have the same interests as me,
Mm,
right? Like I care deeply about women's issues. I feel a community and an affinity for people who also care deeply about it. I have book clubs. I have, a faith practice. Like they're all places where I feel belonging, but I think the place the through line I think in all of them, or what I think is under that, like the layer under it,
yeah.
is places where everyone's being authentic, where
Mm,
I can be authentic and others can be authentic.
mhm.
And then it doesn't matter what the label or the structure or whatever it is that brought us together, but that authenticity is that's I think where belonging thrives.
And as a mom, just
Mhm.
to like pull this together, in what ways have you tried to teach that or exemplify that for your kids?
That's a great question. I mean, parenting is one where you always feel like you should be doing more than you have done and you're not hitting, like you have these grand ideas of how it would play out in an ideal scenario, but it doesn't. Um I'll occasionally invite them to stuff that I do or let them know or talk about the work that I do, or the community events that I go to or bring them with me. Like there was a film screening of the film Join or Die by Robert Putnam. This is a follow up to his Bowling Alone. It's all about connection and how
Oh,
we
I love
need it.
that.
And so I brought my 10-year-old and my 19-year-old
Wow.
to the movie with me. Like,
Yeah.
so I think, but I think it's, again, it's being that place where I don't judge and I try to understand.
I was gonna say just being a safe place
Just
creates that,
trying
right?
to like ask my kids, what they're feeling, what it looks like for them. Like I've noticed, and I've done it with some kids before too, where I'm like, absent of a conversation, these are the assumptions I'm making about your life right now.
The
This
story I
is what
tell
I can
myself is,
this is
yeah,
what I can see,
yeah.
and so this is what I'm assuming, and I would love for you to check that understanding for me. Like what is actually going
Like you
on?
said, better questions.
Because yeah,
Ask better
but I think even
questions.
saying like this is what I actually see. Like this is what it looks like when you're in your room or you're online, or like this is what I'm noticing, and letting them know. I think it's a good thing to know for people to realize early on that that's how we all are. We see things and then we make assumptions.
Mhm.
And so be like, this is what I'm assuming like
And
is happening in
then
your
they get a
life.
chance to be like, yeah, you might be right.
Yeah.
Or
Or like, no,
mom,
this is actually what it is. I'm like, great. Like, that's why we have
fill in
conversations,
the blanks
because
for me.
otherwise I'm doing it on my own and I can be totally wrong. So I think that's one of the core things. I mean, we can all do in our lives, but it's easier, I feel like, with in parenting because you get to observe your children in their natural habitat for like years on
Right.
end, like,
Right.
and it's different than with friendships, right?
Totally.
Where you can still sense things with friends, but I think that's one something that you can offer as a parent
Yeah.
that you're uniquely positioned to do just because you have so much data.
Totally.
Like,
And I want to double down on this, and I just want to say, whether you're a mom, whether you're a dad, whether you're like married, whether you're single, one of the greatest things you can ever do that creates belonging or connection, that creates an opportunity for people to be seen and to be heard, is to be a safe place.
mhm,
Is to figure out how you don't get in the way,
Mhm.
like your stuff,
Mhm.
your backpack that you carry, whatever. It's not like necessarily you always have to take it off, but that you figure out enough about yourself or enough about your ability. I mean, ultimately it comes down to listening and being safe,
Mhm.
but that you can invite somebody to land, right?
Yeah.
Like your life will never be the same than if your ears are bigger than your mouth,
Yeah.
you know?
And like and it's that listening piece, and it's also, I think we have a tendency even with our friends and in our relationships or as parents, where we want to offer advice or be
Fix.
corrective
Yeah.
and fix. And so I think we can develop the habit again about being very upfront about things. Like, do you want me to just listen?
Or do
Is
you
that
want me
what
to
you need
offer
right now?
advice? Yeah.
Do you want me to react to it? Do you want me to ask questions? Like, let me know how you want me to show up right now.
Mhm.
I think that's something that we can all do that we don't do as often, but it's so simple and makes a huge difference
On
to
the
creating that safe
yes.
space and feeling listened to.
I love that. Okay. Where can people find living room conversations or anything that you want to share?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So our website is livingroomconversations.org.
Makes it easy.
And we have over 150 different topics. You can access any of our resources. We have an events page where you can join a conversation. And April 6th to 12th is the National Week of Conversation. So this is
Coming up.
I think it's the fourth or fifth year of National Week of Conversations. And we'll have a national round table.
Oh, nice.
So you can connect online and join a conversation there. And we're going to be talking about freedom in America because
Oh.
it's our 250th.
Oh, I love that. And you can like join living room conversations for free.
Yep.
I know because I went in and I did it. Is there a newsletter that comes out with that, or is
Yeah.
that just okay?
So we'll send you updates and things that are going on, different events we have. I actually got to do a really fun conversation. One of our co-founders is celebrating her birthday this month, and it's Women's History Month. So it was myself and the other co-founders and people who have led living room conversations were all women, and we had a conversation on women in society.
I love that.
And so that will be end of the month. We get to premiere that. So we have a lot of ways where you can engage.
And you guys also have a Instagram.
We do have Instagram.
Okay.
It's Living Room Convo.
And it has a bunch of, because I don't know, like there's various levels of people that engage with social media, but you also have some highlight bubbles that specify stuff.
Like here's some, so at the top of the page you
so
can
like if
look
people
at it.
are like, okay, if you're I don't know, some people are
How do
website
I get
people, some people are
started, or-
Instagram people,
yeah.
but yes, huge fan, super like of you, but also of living room conversations, but also of just like this topic that we've been talking
Yeah.
about. Thank you so much for your passion
Yeah.
and for your energy. And I'm kind of like, we realized before we started this that we had both done Jerusalem together when we were 20, and I love that about us. And I'm excited, and I'm thinking about, speaking of women, and I'm thinking about our lives and the journey that we've taken.
Mhm.
And I'm proud of you, and I'm proud of me. Like I just love
Same.
us.
Yeah.
We're doing good things, and
This has
I
been
get
lovely.
emotional. Yeah.
I know. It is. I think we don't take enough time to reflect and appreciate. And the journeys that have brought and how different they are, but that you can end up in the same place with the
Yeah.
things you care about,
Yeah,
or in the same physical place.
And just be so like that holy envy that I said. Like just be so excited and want to blow so much wind in your sails. I know the same over here. You talked about our friend Melissa, like
Yeah.
you know, some of our other friends that we have. It's just like to sit in spaces where you're doing good and other people are doing good, and to look across the aisle and be like, this is the world we want, right?
Mhm.
This is the world we want to create, and that it's possible,
And we can do it. And
that
we're
we can
doing
do
it in
and
our
we
own
are
sphere, right?
doing
Like, we're
it. That's what
doing
I
it.
want to say to
Yeah.
people. Don't get lost in what you're hearing and seeing. Always, there's a lot of good and so much.
Look for the helpers.
Look for the helpers.
Yeah.
Thanks, Becca.
Yeah, thanks.